Hi, Talking Cars fans. Want to join us for an episode of the podcast that we are going to record at the University of Michigan on January 7, 2017? Email me a short note by December 20th to talkingcars@consumer.org. Based on the responses we get, we'll select a limited number of people to attend. Sorry, but you're going to have to pay your own way for travel. As always, thank you for watching, and we hope we get to meet you soon. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Talking Cars with Consumer Reports. I'm Tom Muchler.
I'm Gabe Shanhar.
And I'm Jake Fisher.
On this episode, we're going to talk about two sedans that basically redefine their brands here in the United States. We're going to talk about the Lincoln Continental. We're going to talk about the Alfa Romeo Giulia. But first, the Continental. Jake, it's been like forever since Lincoln has had a true flagship.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Lincoln has been kind of, I'd call them overgrown Fords, but they're not really overgrown Fords. They're just like Ford with different styling.
Yeah, the MKS is not a convincing luxury
right, and
car.
I mean the MKZ. I mean they're not bad. I mean they drive
the MKZ's
nice.
okay. Yeah.
MKZ certainly. I mean you look at what Ford has done with Fusion. I mean it drives really nice, and so does the MKZ. But this is really a big car. This is a flagship. This is a big luxury car, and I mean I was driving it last night. I'm like, this thing is quiet. This is roomy. It drives nice. The steering is nice. The interior pieces are really nice. I mean, Lincolns of yore, they were big and they were comfy and they were plush, but they didn't drive nice and they didn't have that interior quality that we see here.
Yeah, I mean, like town cars, they were the top of the Lincoln lineup for a while, but there was nothing really refined about town cars at the end.
Right. So yeah, Jake's absolutely right. I mean, this is the first Lincoln that doesn't have a Ford parallel in the lineup, not a direct parallel. I mean, of course, it's based on the Fusion platform, but that's a great platform to base just about everything on.
Right.
And yeah, the car is really comes across. I mean, it has a presence. You look at it. It has a size. It has. It comes across very flagshipy. And yeah, I mean, it does everything it needs to do very well. It's quiet. It rides comfortably. It's roomy. I think a lot of people are going to be happy with it. I mean, with the 2.7 turbo, it's got the grunt.
So
it's
much
got.
power. I mean, that engine
very effortless.
That engine can pull around a 7,000-pound trailer with an F-150. Right. It's going to be okay with a Continental.
Sure.
But
I miss the old spare tire in the back, though.
Really? Yeah. No, you don't. Driving this car, I thought, if I was a character on Goodfellas, if I was a made man, this would be the modern day car that I would drive. That is what this car is. It harkens back to the days of The Godfather and Goodfellas and Billy Joel song lyrics where, big American sedans ruled. Chrysler Imperials.
But it's not a Cadillac.
That was well done. No, it's not. It goes back to traditional American luxury, and there have been so many years where traditional American luxury hasn't existed anymore. Because look where Cadillac's gone. Cadillac is more Bavarian than BMWs. This is a traditional American car, but yet, I mean, it's not a sloppy road-going couch.
Well, I mean, I think an obvious comparison is the Cadillac CT6. So the CT6 is a big car with presence, but also they worked out all the other stuff. So I mean, they did this with this Continental, and they did it with the CT6 too. That you get that large car presence, that huge trunk where you could put things in, but it also drives really good. I mean, this thing is something where you could hop out of a BMW or Mercedes-Benz and feel at home, and the interior quality is there. So I mean, it's really kind of like flexing the muscles of the domestics, saying, hey, we could do this stuff too.
I don't know. I drove the Continental a couple nights ago, and then I drove the CT6. I drove them back to back. They do feel very different to me. I mean, the CT6, listen, of all the cars we have here, and in fact, almost of anything I could possibly get, the CT6 is what I would pick to drive cross country. I adore that car. It is fun, it is comfortable, it is luxurious. This is competent, but it's more dialed back. It's more relaxed.
It's more relaxed, yeah, definitely more relaxed. But I will say, I don't think you should compare the Lincoln and the Cadillac really directly. I mean, there are other players out there.
Why not, Gabe?
You can, of course you can. But,
but I'm telling you not to.
They're about relaxed, traditional American luxury. I mean, you look at Hyundai Genesis, for instance, or the G90. these cars
Yeah, the G90 is.
are really targeting that kind of place in the marketplace for a relaxed traditional American luxury, without any like aspirations, without like boasting about, oh, we do the Nürburgring in like 8 minutes, 7 seconds, you know.
Yeah.
So that's you can't ignore these guys. I mean, they're new players, but you know they should be paid attention to.
Well, so I mean, the Continental, I mean, certainly the Cadillac is, you know, that definitely tries to be more sporty and more, you know, all that, but it doesn't really give up anything. So the CT6 is kind of like, you know, it's still quiet and it still rides well. And certainly this is a little bit more relaxed than that. But in terms of like the steering and the capability, you know, I still think it's more of that Cadillac than it is like, say, a Lexus. Like someone coming from a Lexus, or if you came from an RX or a ES, I mean, it's very much all about being removed and isolated.
Right.
And while this has that quietness, you know, the steering is pretty darn good.
Right, and even the G90, the Genesis G90, the steering is not to the quality of this Continental.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a handling kind of car. I mean, it's a cushy cruiser,
Right.
In very much in the traditional American kind of way. And I mean, it remains to be seen, you know, really how many customers are there to really aspire for that kind of thing.
No, definitely. No, there's a lot of things that are done very well in this Continental. I mean, the interior is very nice. Thank goodness it's Sync 3 nowadays instead of my Lincoln Touch.
Although I do have a problem with the
well,
controls, and it's the shifter.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so in this car, the shifter is there. It's like they took away the presets and they relabeled them the Prindle, right? So I mean, instead of presets, there's park, reverse. I mean, it's fine trying to do something different if it works. But what really gets me is when you take away something and replace it with the shifter. And we see this all the time, right? So this is the presets. I mean, it really looks like these are the presets for the thing, and that's the shifter. We have other cars where they remove the turn signal and that's the shifter, or they remove the wipers and it's the shifter, or the radio knob and that's suddenly the shifter. I mean, come on.
I mean, to give it a little bit of credit, at least compared to like the MKZ and the MKC, they've given you more space between the touchscreen and the row of buttons. So
but
when
it-
you brace against the side to use the screen. But yeah, you have to
It's
search for
grouped.
yeah.
It's grouped. I mean, you look at it, it's almost a logical group. Like, here's the radio, and here's the controls for the radio, and oh no, those aren't the controls for the radio.
What do you think of the door handles?
They're pretty.
They are pretty.
I mean, clearly that is something that's like, wow, let's do something that as soon as you get to the car, it's a little bit different, and it looks interesting. It looks like part of the molding.
And inside it's like a Corvette. You know, you've got the push button to
but
release
for
the
both of
doors
those-
and an emergency release.
I'm
hidden.
not crazy about
But,
that.
but
You have to
there-
hunt for that.
it's like they're trying to do something to be different. And we see this
Sure.
from a lot of automakers. It's not any better. It doesn't work any better than a normal door handle. In fact, for the getting out, it's great. Every time you have somebody in your car and they're
You have
like,
to explain where the button is,
especially
yeah.
at night. It's like, oh no, that little light thing there, press that. The thing you can't read unless you get your head way down.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make sense, but they're trying to be different.
The seats are a little weird too. They've got these like wings.
Yeah,
they look very expensive. But
They look weird, but they actually work.
you
know?
think? I found them a bit narrow.
I was pretty happy in the seat. Yeah.
Yeah, I found it a bit narrow. I
mean, I was a little struck by how high the cowl is. You're very surrounded with
It's a chunk of a
very
car.
tall partitions around.
I mean,
you.
this isn't a chip off of the block. It's the whole block.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot here. I am frustrated that you're spending over. This car's $56,000. We couldn't find one with the 2.7 in all-wheel drive and the safety, forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking.
tech package.
It's frustrating to me that this stuff is still optional in this
it's-
day when it's standard on a Corolla and this is Ford's
Yeah,
flagship.
it's ridiculous. Certainly we could have got it if we wound up getting the higher engine and the performance this or whatever, but that's nuts. Like you said.
yeah, the 2.7 is plenty. You don't need the
But-
400 horsepower.
And it's the typical engine for this car.
But if you go and like you said, if you bought a Corolla or a RAV4 or you're going to get the safety stuff standard. You're going to get automatic emergency braking, and a brand new flagship to make it optional. And I hope going forward they'll put them in more of the bottom line. I mean, we go out and we buy the very first ones, so we only look at the market right now. But yeah, I mean, the only way we could have gotten that basic safety stuff that almost everyone is getting now, wow, we would have to wind up with a powertrain with.
Yeah, with a 3-liter, with a 400 horsepower, with the.
So if you care about safety,
if you
care about safety,
get the fastest car.
you got to get the super big horsepower engine. It doesn't make sense.
Okay. Yep. Next, we're going to talk about the Alfa Romeo Giulia.
Now we're talking.
That's right. Now we're talking. Well, I mean, people have been talking about Alfa coming back to America for
about 15 years.
Forever. I mean, it's almost as long as they teased the Pontiac Solstice.
Right.
You know, every show for 5 years, Solstice, and then. But Alfa is finally back. I mean, they had the 4C, which was kind of a go-kart that not many people bought, but now there's a mass market sedan.
Right. So the 4C is very esoteric, but with the Giulia, they are aiming right at the heart of the sports sedan market.
Right at the
against
BMW
the BMW
3
Series, Audi A4, Mercedes C-Class. And the other shoe is going to be the SUV, the Stelvio, which is probably going to outsell the Giulia about 10-1.
You know, is the world asking for an Alfa Romeo SUV?
The world's asking for SUVs.
Yes.
And anyone who wants
depressing about that.
Anyone who wants to
right.
sell cars
Has to sell an SUV.
has to sell an SUV.
Back to the Giulia.
Back to the Giulia.
Okay.
Cheer me up.
No, the car, I mean, first of all, it looks dynamite. It drives, I mean, it really is fun to drive. I mean,
Steering is very, very, very
Steering
good.
is quick without being nervous. The car is tied down. It just puts a smile on your face. The sound is great, and if you dial into the right modes.
Yeah, they're one of the few companies that actually, when you change the modes in a car, it really feels something. They call it their DNA, and it works surprisingly well.
Yeah, it works beautifully.
Your thoughts on the Alfa?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time since we've seen a real Alfa here, and even back before when Alfa was here, they had with the Roadster. I mean, the 164, way
Yeah, the
back.
164 was an oddball car.
But I mean, they have been. I mean, at one point I was living in Europe and I was driving a 156. You know, and this was like a more contemporary Alfa, and it was a fabulous car. I mean, it was a really, really enjoyable to drive car, and yeah, I think we're seeing that again. So the new Giulia, it is a very enjoyable car to drive. The issue for it is a crowded market. BMW 3 Series is very good and has a big following. The Audi A4 is a
Fantastic
terrific
car. Yes.
and reliable too. And reliable, let's pause there.
Reliable and Alfa.
And
I'm not sure.
well, obviously we don't have a lot of, Alphas here, but I mean, again, it's from Fiat Chrysler. I mean, this is
A company that has struggled to make reliable cars.
Yeah. So I mean, sure, maybe it's a little bit different, or maybe the steering is a little bit better than the BMW 3 Series. But when you have a car with questionable reliability, I mean, again, don't get me wrong. We don't have data for this car; it's just coming out. But the reputation and the data that we do have for anything from Fiat Chrysler, and what we know about a new vehicle to market, and all of the opportunities to have something go wrong, wow, it's really a risky purchase for, maybe a little bit more style, maybe a little bit, nicer steering.
Yeah, the other thing is,
Sure, I mean, it's anyone's guess if it's going to hold out together. But, this
Some
market
guesses are better.
segment is, leasing is very popular in this segment. And if you're someone who leases these cars and you're kind of rotate BMW, Audi, Mercedes, so just to be a little different, you might be tempted to go with an Alfa, and it's pretty enjoyable. I mean, but also to just expand on what Jake said, it's the first Alfa that's a real Alfa, trying to get back to the glory days. Legit rear-wheel drive Alfa, not front-wheel drive, not something that's based on the Fiat platform that's more plebeian.
Right. No, it is a bit smaller than you don't get the interior space of a 3 Series. It is trying very hard to be a close-coupled sporty sedan. I mean, it succeeds at that very well.
Yeah.
We'll see if the marketplace accepts it. It certainly has been a long time in waiting. So now we're going to get to some questions and comments. I always wonder, when people ask us for car advice, do they actually buy anything, or do they follow our advice? We have an answer from our last show.
Fascinating.
Remember, someone asked about buying a Roadster, with modern safety equipment.
Oh, the LA to San Francisco.
Yeah,
commute.
yeah, he was gonna. Yeah, so we found out what he bought. Jim Lee writes, "I bought a 2012 Miata folding hardtop for now, at 20 grand to hold me over. It's not the most comfortable, but a blast to drive and high smiles per gallon. Hopefully, with something will come up soon before my back starts hurting with forward collision and autonomous braking in a roadster or convertible."
Oh.
So he's gonna have fun. But yeah, I mean, like we said, the marketplace is hard. There aren't many roadsters or convertibles that are affordable that have all the safety equipment. Next, we had some comments about talking about the Subaru Impreza. That Jazz guy writes, "I think CR still fails to understand that there are some people for whom a fully loaded vehicle like a $29,000 Impreza makes sense. If you keep your car a long time, more than 5 to 6 years, extras that add to the comfort and usability of the vehicle can make perfect sense." I think what he was going at was that I said a $29,000 Impreza was a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And it is a lot of money. I don't disagree.
Well, I mean, look, I mean, it's true. I mean, you look at that segment and it get pricey. I mean, the other thing that we talk about too is if you're looking at a luxury vehicle, getting a more pedestrian car with the options, you're getting a lot of that luxury too. So I mean, in a way, he's got himself a budget car that has the luxury he wants, and,
Right.
and there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Well, let's acknowledge that for a lot of people, price per square footage of a car is a thing.
Totally.
And but I mean, there are people that for them, the compact footprint of the car is a value in its own right, and they're willing to pay for that.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that. Thanksgiving week I spent in Europe, in Britain, with my in-laws, where there was not Thanksgiving, but all the same. We drove around.
You were thankful anyway.
Yeah, we were thankful. We drove around in my father-in-law's Volkswagen Golf, 4 adults and our luggage. And we all fit, and it's easy to park, and the car feels mature and grown up. I mean, I actually can understand, getting a loaded Impreza. That would be a sort of car, or a loaded Golf, which isn't as reliable. I mean, that would be the sort of car I personally would buy, but I don't have kids. I have this sort of Eurocentric background. I can understand it, but there's a reason why loaded versions of these cars are only 5 or 10% of their model mix.
But again, I mean, you're talking about 4 adults in a car. How often does anyone drive that way? I mean, I do have kids, and you know what? They're fine in the back of a Golf. They're fine in the back. My wife's got a Prius. They're fine in the back there. I mean, how much room do they really need?
Right.
And they're fine. They're closer to talk to. It's all good.
He's right.
Well, my kids were pretty happy in the back of the CT6 this Thanksgiving weekend.
Well, again,
They better be happy in the back of the
last night I was in
CT6.
the Continental with the boys, and I'm like screaming at them, like, "Can you hear me back there?" And they're like, "No, Dad."
I thought the car was quiet.
Speaking of the Impreza, when we did that episode, we had a pair of press cars, and we were talking about the term rented. And someone asks us to explain that. Colin Heath says, "You keep saying rented when referring to the press cars. Why do you rent them? Aren't they meant to be for you to test?"
So yes, so I guess I would like to ask the audience, is there a better term they would use? And here's the story. Where they're not our vehicles, all the cars that we test, we purchase, because we want to make sure that we have a representative car. We don't rely on anything that's handed to us from the manufacturers. We use the term rented because they lend us the car. We pay for that use. That's why we put rented. Renting, of course, means we're not going to Avis to get the
prototype Subaru.
prototype Subaru or whatever it is.
Pre-production
Yeah,
Subaru
pre-production Alfa Romeo, because you can't really do that. So yeah, I mean, there's got to be a better way of presenting it. They're manufacturer cars, and we're not getting them for free. That's what we're
that's
trying
the
to
big
say.
difference. Most publications are not. The New York Times pays something, but otherwise, most publications don't pay anything for press cars.
Right. We want to be in a position where we don't get any freebies from the manufacturers, but we still want to have some content on cars before we actually buy them and test them for a formal road test.
And it comes up in our conversation very often because we want to make, the point that this is not a purchased car, so everything with a little bit of a grain of salt. We're not going to. That's why you're not going to see numbers on these on the borrowed cars.
That's right. That's why we're not running 0 to 60 numbers. We're not making definitive scores on noise or ride or things like that.
So it's good.
There's other things we learned by buying our own test cars too. This is our 3rd Lincoln Continental.
Yes.
You want to explain that?
Oh my goodness. So yeah, so we wanted to get the first Lincoln Continental we could find, and you know, I mean, Gabe, you run that program. You scour, make sure that we get these cars soon, which is terrific. The problem with this.
So the person who was assigned to buy the Continental got to the dealer, and they felt for some reason the car wasn't ready.
The dealer did.
Yes, the dealer did, and didn't want to deliver it, and so that deal was canceled. At that point, we were already not anonymous that we were Consumer Reports, because we like to buy the cars completely anonymous.
So we got in a situation where, so when we purchased the car, we don't tell them who we are, but we got in a situation, they knew where we were ready to pick it up, and they're just like, hold on, wait, we want to fix this and that, and that's not quite right. And you made the right call, and you were like,
right, yeah, our cover is blown. Okay,
bye-bye.
Let's start from the beginning.
We're going to another dealer.
Maybe they would have done that with any other customer, but we were concerned that it was us. And
we don't want a car that's been doctored or anything special happened to it.
So that brings us to Continental number 2.
And then we went out of state.
So the person who was assigned to buy that went to Massachusetts to buy the car there, and on the way back, it overheated, and he got stranded. And so Ford says that a coolant hose wasn't clamped right, and the car leaked coolant, and that's how it lost coolant, got overheated. And the car did its right thing. It gave the right warnings. It went into limp home mode. Nevertheless, it was a huge inconvenience. We also made a decision then, okay, I mean, just on the off chance of some damage to the car, we don't want that car to be our official test car.
Right.
So the dealer agreed to buy it back from us, and they came and took it back. So here we go, Lincoln Continental number 3.
Continental number 3.
Right. So I mean, that was an interesting case because I mean, I think that was the first time ever that the car didn't make it to our facility, to the track, without breaking down. I mean, not to say this is going to be an unreliable car. I don't know that. This is probably one of the very first cars that was off the line. We're certainly not. It doesn't influence our reliability rating. We're doing this from all the data that we get, but it does show that. Wow, if you want to be the very first one in your block to get a car, maybe wait a month. Yeah. let them figure out how to put the hoses on better.
Yeah, that's right. Let someone else work out all the bugs.
Yeah. Actually, you know, we also reached out to Ford. They apologized for the inconvenience. They said the car responded the way it was supposed to given the situation, and they said it was an isolated case and not a trend.
Yeah.
That is going to wrap it up for this episode of Talking Cars. As always, we thank you for listening and watching. We'll see you again next time.